Hello and welcome. I am so excited because we are here today starting a new weekly series. We are going to be starting IG Lives every Monday. Hello. We're going to be starting these every Monday, and we have people spread out all over the world. Our members are in almost every time zone. So make sure to check the announcements about
Hi, how
exactly
are
what time. Hello.
you?
Good, and thank you for being I don't know if I should say our guinea pig, but our very first guest on this restart. We have had IG Lives in the past, but it's been a few years, so we're starting this back
Yes,
up. So thank you
no
for being our
problem.
first
Thank you for
guest.
inviting me. I'm really honored.
And it's funny for those that don't know, I feel like Maria and I have like spent the week together because between IG Lives, book clubs, and board meetings, we've seen each other
Yeah,
several times this week. Not in In case for those that have missed it, we had a really great conversation on Multicultural Children's Book Day. Although there were some technical problems, but it's still a really good interview. And then she was also featured on Multicultural Children's Book Club, which is run by Walking in Other People's Shoes, and they're going to have that recording up soon. Um, and of course, Maria has been a longtime member of the board of directors at Multicultural Kid Blogs. She served for a very long time on our editorial board. She was a supervisory editor, and still does so much work for MKB. So it is our pleasure to have you on here to help promote what you're doing. So why don't we jump in and you can kind of give a little introduction about yourself and then the reason that we're talking today, which is your brand new Curious George book about
great.
Chinese
Thank
New
you
Year.
for that introduction, Leanna. My name is Maria Wen Adcock. I am the author of the new book, It's Chinese New Year, Curious George. It just launched last Tuesday, January 3rd, and it's just in time because Chinese New Year falls on January 22nd this year. So, as Leanna mentioned, we got to know each other through blogging. So I have a blog called Bicultural Mama, which is about bicultural families with a focus on Asian families. This blog has evolved over the years. I started it back in 2011 when I first started writing books. And obviously that was a long time ago. The process to write books can often take many, many years. And so this blog evolved as I did. It became a parenting blog, and now it's changed. It's becoming an author blog, and I have a focus on multicultural books. So it grows with me, and then this book came out, and it's been a long time coming because it's something that I've wanted to do since I was a kid, is to write a book. I just didn't know how. Many decades later, here I am. But like I said, it was a long process because it took 10 years to even get an agent, which is how this came about through my agent working with a publisher to find that opportunity.
For those of you aspiring authors, or if you're just interested in that process, you should really go watch the interview that we had on Multicultural Children's Book Day, because Maria goes into a lot of detail about getting the agent, what it's like to work on a series like this that is kind of owned by somebody else, and how that all works. So you should really go watch that. That was really interesting. But I I would like to, for this channel, to focus a little more on just the overall picture about Chinese New Year, sharing your heritage, and maybe we could talk a little bit about. I know you said your blog and kind of your mission has evolved a lot over the years, but sometimes something that's as constant is, like you talked about, is the multiculturalism, and especially sharing Chinese heritage. And I know not even just blogging, but just personally, that's something that's really important to you. You do a lot, like at your kids' school, to help kind of promote holidays or heritage. Why is that so important for you, that your kids, and then sharing with, beyond that, sharing with other kids, that they know about and they kind of celebrate that
Oh, the
Chinese
reason it's
heritage?
important to me is because that was something that I felt like I didn't necessarily have when I was growing up, because I grew up in the Midwest and there was not a lot of diversity where I was, especially in my town and specifically my school. And so I did not grow up with a sense of feeling pride around my background because I wanted to be like everyone else. And I stood out, I was different, and I got teased and bullied for being Asian. So that made me think it was a bad thing to be who I was. And it took many, many years. It really wasn't until I went to college that I started to really embrace who I was, the acceptance and having pride in my heritage. So that was something that's very top of mind with my own family, where I want my kids to feel proud of who they are, both sides. My kids are bicultural, so they have the Chinese background, but they also have mixed European white descent from their father. And so they get reinforced every day on their the white side, because that's kind of everywhere around us, town we're in and so forth. So what I was always concerned about was, are they going to not know the other half of them, and is that going to go away? Is that going to disappear with their generation? Then I felt that pressure of like, oh, I really need to make sure that they know. I mean, if later on they choose to identify with one side or the other, that's up to them. But they should be presented with both sides equally, so that they can, hopefully embrace both. So I wanted to make sure that they understood, it's just to feel the pride of that part of it and how unique it is. Whether it's the food, the celebration, the language, there's very many cool parts about it that's pretty unique. And then for the bigger picture, I wanted to have representation in the books that I write. So this is my first book, but I have many manuscripts that I have already written that have not been published yet. And they all deal with the theme of multiculturalism or Asian culture, or specifically Chinese culture, because these are things that I did not see when I was growing up. And I think that if I had, I probably wouldn't have felt so alien or foreign in my own country that I was born in. And hopefully other kids who read this, if they are Asian, they will see themselves and feel like, oh, well, that's kind of normal. Like I can see myself. And then kids who are not Asian, they can see kids who are Asian and be like, okay, well, it's kind of normal. They have different kinds of people around. It's just life, and not think it's weird or othered.
Right. Yeah, and that's so beautiful. And like I said, for those of you that know Maria, this is something that you carry forth into everything that you do. And like I said, I know you've done things at your kids' school, you do it through your blog and now through your books. And it seems like holidays, we're talking about Chinese New Year. Holidays are such a great way to do that with kids, whether it's about their own heritage or learning about another one, just because they're so fun. There's so much and it kind of brings together food and music and so many different traditions. What do you think it is about that makes it so, I don't know, such kind of an easy way to teach kids about other cultures or about their own culture? And then do you have, like, what are your favorite memories of Chinese New Year from when you were growing up, or maybe new traditions or memories you're creating?
Well, definitely the holidays are a great way to get kids involved, because holidays are always fun. Whether it's Christmas or Halloween, it's a special time. So for Chinese New Year, for example, it's the most popular or the biggest holiday in China, and it lasts for 15 days. So it's really a long, big celebration. There's really good food. The music is not as much in play with this holiday, but we have the decorations. You have the wearing red or versions of red, whether it's pink or purple. Versions of red, because red means good luck. So there's a lot of symbolism in the food, in the clothes. The getting together with the family is very important. Unity, wholesomeness. So everything that we do. So even like there's something called the Tangyin rice balls that are eaten at the end of Chinese New Year, and they symbolize that unity and wholeness of the family, but also of the full moon, because at the end of every Chinese New Year, there will always be a full moon. It's based on the moon cycle, so it works out that way.
And that just brings up something for those that were able to attend the book club, the Multicultural Children's Book Club. Maria went into detail about just this book is so great because, you bring your own lived experience, but also I'm trying to think where it was. There was an illustration. You just have such attention to detail to make sure that this book is so accurate about all the things you're talking about, Like here was, I think you said like the original illustration had a full moon, and you're like, no, 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 it's not a full moon at the beginning. But then when you do get to the end, it is a full moon. So there are just so many details built into this that, you know, when you pick up this book, this is very accurate. You know, there are a lot of books out there, and this one, you know, you're getting the really authentic traditions. And I was wondering, because you went into, in another interview, you went into how the Curious George series, they have a real format for the holiday books. And they always have the 7 tabs, and they even told you like how many stanzas to have on each page. Was it hard to narrow it down and say, okay, these are the 7 things I want to have on this tab, or was that pretty easy to do? Did you have to think about, okay, which traditions am I not going to focus on? Which ones am I?
Yes, because there are so many traditions, and narrowing it down to basically 7. I mean, there's 7 tabs, but even within each page, there are actually many traditions tucked into each page, because there was just like so much information. So it was really about like, how can we put in as much information as possible, but provide some sort of depth. Like, we don't want it to be like, oh, let's just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. You know, we actually want to provide some, you know, information about it, you know, why it's important or why it's symbolic. So with the tabs, they're almost like summaries of the main point of the section. But within each section, for example, this one, we talk about the legend of Nian. We talk about 15 days, spring finally begins, and what other countries do. So it's actually many topics. But the most interesting thing for like the kids is going to be like the Nian and the monster, the beast that used to chase the villagers, and that was the origin of Chinese New Year's, how they scared him away with the color red and the loud noises of the firecrackers and the drums. And that's why today we wear red for good luck, and we celebrate with firecrackers and, you know, the drums to scare the beast away.
And actually, you mentioned about how, and you touch on this in the book, how there are a lot of cultures that celebrate Lunar New Year, but this one is specifically about Chinese New Year. And I was wondering if you could go into that again. You gave such a great explanation in our previous interview about why you chose to write Chinese New Year versus Lunar New Year. What is the difference, and why did you go with the Chinese New Year?
So when I was growing up, I knew this holiday only as Chinese New Year because we were Chinese. And then a few years ago, I started hearing the term Lunar New Year. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's a more inclusive way of saying it, but I didn't really understand the nuances. So what happened was, it was actually as an editor of multicultural kid blogs that the Asian community educated me about the differences. So Lunar New Year is the umbrella term for any culture that celebrates the New Year based on the moon cycles. So this includes not just China, but also Korea has Korean New Year, Vietnam has Tet, which is their New Year, there's Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. So all these other countries celebrate the New Year, but they don't necessarily do it in the exact same way. So there is some overlap of a few things, but there are things that are very different. You know, some countries celebrate for 15 days, some for 3 days. Some use red envelopes, some use white envelopes, you know, for lucky money. So it was something where it's very diverse. And a lot of times people think that Lunar New Year and Chinese New Year are interchangeable. They're the same thing. But then all these people from the other cultures are like, wait a second, you can't, you know, you're saying specifically Chinese New Year traditions that are not practiced in any of these other countries. You can't call it like Lunar New Year as if it's like Lunar New Year for like everyone else. And there's truth to that. So that was something that I had to learn. And even today I see it all the time. People use Lunar New Year and Chinese New Year as if they're the same thing, without, again, understanding the nuances. And so in this book, we wanted to acknowledge the other cultures that did celebrate Lunar New Year and be very accurate and specific that, okay, these traditions in here are specific to the Chinese culture. These are things that I grew up with in a Chinese American household, and I wanted to just be respectful of all these other cultures by not just lumping it all in and assuming that like everyone does Chinese New Year under the Lunar New Year banner.
Right, and I think that goes along with how you really wanted this to be an authentic book. This is about your experience. It's kind of an own voices book about Chinese New Year. And like you said, I think there is a lot of misunderstanding, and we think that the terms are interchangeable. But that was a really great explanation about the differences. And to go back to the book, which is, if you know, she's talking all these details about what's included. People might be confused because it's a board book. This really, it is for younger children, but it grows with them. It has so much information. I mean, it's very accessible, but this is something that's really appropriate for older children because it has so much detail in here. But of course, it's all done with this cute little character, so it's really fun to read. I think we had talked about, what was the term that you said, that this is like informational fiction?
Informational fiction in the sense that there are a lot of facts in here. You know, it's about Chinese New Year, but it's fiction because we have a monkey that's the main character hanging out with his friend May. Regarding the board book, this is a board book, and board books typically automatically are targeting babies, like ages 0 to 4, because they have the thick pages that won't rip, and they have the tabs that are easy to open up. The Curious George brand of board books, which has existed for over 10 years, they have the exact same format, which is the 7 tabs, 4 stanzas of 4 lines each in rhyme. And so I was asked to do the book in the same format. And there's a lot of words. It's not a typical board book. You know, a lot of board books only have maybe 1 sentence per page, very simple. You know, this is my first New Year. We wear red, you know, things like that. The publisher wanted the more in-depth information, and so this book has actually over 570 words. That word count is typical of a picture book versus a board book. So these are atypical board books. It's almost like a picture book that happens to be printed on board paper. But as you mentioned, it grows with the child. So the little ones can look through the illustrations, go through the tabs. They won't rip the pages, and as they grow, they can start reading it, and they can learn the words and understand more of the meaning behind each of these traditions.
And being that part of the Curious George brand, I mean, I think it really does so much to have this kind of representation. What do you think that means to have Curious George learning about Chinese New Year?
I think it just shows that Curious George is inclusive. I mean, everyone loves Curious George. He's in many countries. He's an international figure. He's been around since the late 1930s, early 40s. And so just having him hang out with lots of different kinds of people and kids and cultures, it just normalizes that there are lots of different types of people in the world who celebrate things in different ways, and it's all good. You know, he has the board books of all the traditional American holidays. They've covered Christmas, Halloween, you know, Easter. That's all covered. And now Curious George is expanding as all of us, you know, should, you know, be more aware of the world. And this is an easy way to do it, is through books and reading.
I love it, and that's so exciting that you are part of making that happen. Before we go, because I'm just looking at the time, can you tell us what else you are working on? I know you can't say a lot because there are some things that are in the works that you can't announce yet, but can you give us an idea of like the kinds of things? Like, do you think it'll be more picture books, or are you thinking other age groups?
I definitely have more of a focus on picture books. I do have the start of a middle grade novel in the works, but I am primary picture books. I have several manuscripts that are already completed that my agent has, and I do have something in the pipeline that I'm not allowed to announce yet until the publisher announces it to the industry, but there will be more things coming in the next year or two regarding picture books. That's all.
Well, that's exciting. So if you're not following her yet, make sure that you do. And you've gotten some lovely comments about thank you for sharing your beautiful culture and book. Thank you for talking about your lovely book. So, and thank all of you for joining us and watching. Like I said, we're going to be doing these interviews every week, usually at 2 p.m. Eastern, but check our page to make sure, since we do have people in different time zones, so we might change it a little. Thank you, Maria, for being our first guest. I'm so excited for you about this book and excited to see all of the other books that you have coming out. You're so talented. So make sure you're following Maria. Go get the book if you don't already have it, and then watch for announcements
Yes,
about what else is
thank you so
going to be
much.
coming.
I am so honored to be your first guest, and I wish good luck with the rest of the series for Multicultural Kid Blogs and their IG lives.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. If you missed the beginning, we'll have this up on Instagram in a few minutes and then on
Bye.
YouTube later
Thanks.
today. Bye.